Scripture comes from the book of Isaiah. The Lord says, "See, the former things have taken place, and new things I declare. Before they spring into being, I announce them to you." Preparing for anything new is uncomfortable and can be scary. New relationships, new locations, new jobs, even forgiveness and trust, all require courage and faith. If we are watchful, we might begin to see ways that God is working in our lives that we previously never dreamed of. New things may become visible. They may even threaten the very core of what we know or believe. Whenever we find ourselves thinking everything is going according to plan, we can see this as a sign to be full of courage and look for the unexpected. Before we know it, we may have an opportunity to step out and watch for the new discoveries God wants to reveal to us. Let's pray. Dear God, give us the courage to step out and trust you. Amen.
Thank you. Sissy has the lesson today, so
I do.
stand up and whoever. And you do so well.
I need it.
Yeah.
This is a very good lesson, and it's one that you probably all know very well. But there are 3 or 4 different scriptures that go with it, and I kept mixing them up and putting them in different order. So I don't know how it's going to come out, but I love the study. The name of the lesson is Follow Me. And that's good. You can't go wrong with that lesson. This is Jesus speaking, and he says, "Follow me," no matter what. That's all you need to worry about. Follow me. And I will end this lesson with a little Quo Vadis moment that I had in my life when I was lost. Okay. And everybody gets lost sometimes, and the only way out of lostness is follow Jesus. Okay. The devotional reading is Matthew 10, 5 through 15, and I'm going to read that, and then we will probably go back and forth between these lessons. I'm going to start at 1:10 because it gives you a little more grounded in it. He called his 12 disciples together and gave them authority to drive out evil spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, who is called Peter. Now remember, Peter was the first one called, and he was always called first when the list appears. And his brother, Andrew, and James and John, the sons of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, and Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Go to the lost sheep of Israel, and as you go, preach this message. The kingdom of heaven is near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Do not take along gold or silver, copper in your belt. Take no bag for the journey. Take no sandals or a staff, for the worker is worthy of his hire. Whatever town or village you enter, search out someone there and stay in this house until you leave. And as you enter the home, give it your greeting. And as if it is good for you, give it your peace when you leave. That is the commission for Jesus to the 12 disciples to go into the world and preach the message of his life and his messiahship, and to do the things that he did, that is, feed the hungry and heal the sick. That is the commission of all disciples of Jesus for all times. And if you call yourself a disciple, that means you're still a student. You're a student learning to be an apostle. And the apostle is the ones who feel like they have been a disciple long enough that they can share the gospel and they can be teachers. So disciple is the ones who learn, and apostles are those who teach. But all of them are called to feed the sick, to feed the hungry, heal the sick. And you know, there's all kind of hunger and there's all kind of sickness. So you never run out of anything to do. There's always work out there for you to do. And that's the devotional reading. The background scripture is from the book of John. And that's the one that's printed in your lesson. So I'll just read this from the lesson. Remember last week they had been fishing, and this is the post-resurrection appearance, and they had been fishing and they caught a great number of fish, 135 big fish, and they pulled the nets in, and when they got the nets all in, Jesus was standing on the shore and he was cooking fish for everybody, so they were having a great reunion party. Now this is immediately following that encounter on the shores of Lake well, there's 3 or 4 names. The Sea of Galilee. That's where they were. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And he answered, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you." And Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and you went where you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." And Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death which Peter would glorify God with. And then he said to him, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This was the one who had leaned against Jesus at the supper and said, "Lord, who is going to betray you?" And when Jesus saw this disciple, he asked the Lord, "What about him?" And Jesus said, "If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You follow me." Because of this, the rumor spread among the believers that this disciple would not die. But Jesus did not say that he would not die. He only said, "If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you?" This is the disciple who testifies to these things and who wrote them down. We know that his testimony is true. And Jesus did many other things as well. And every one of them, if every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would have to be written. That's your testimony today. And it's very good lesson. I said everybody knows that that lesson, but remember, Jesus is questioning Peter, who is the first among the disciples to be named and the first to be called on, and well, the first to be called. So he has an important place as leader, and he is called the big fisherman. And when Jesus said, I am going to make you fishers of men, he was putting Peter really in charge of the organization that would make fishers of men. And I think that is why in the 3rd century or so, the church, which was then the only church, the Catholic Church, decided that Peter must have been the first pope. And so they still, when they have their list of popes, he is always named as the first name of popes. Now, the Protestant Church does not recognize popes, but we do recognize the leadership of people that Jesus appointed, and we are still very much bound by that leadership. As a leader, Peter dropped the ball a lot of times. He made a lot of mistakes. He talked when he should have been listening, and he ran when he should have been sitting down. He did a lot of things that were very difficult to get by, but in the end, he was still the first call to the disciples, very important to the work of Jesus Christ, and every time he was forgiven. The lesson writers kind of mentioned a Super Bowl player whose name was Joe Montana, who I think was probably won more Super Bowls than any other. I don't know, maybe he didn't win more than any other, but he won a lot of Super Bowls, and he was a super player. So he had at least 38 games where he was way back in the hole, and there was no way that he could win. And yet somehow, miraculously, he got his team moving, and they came back, and they won the game. And he was called the comeback kid. In this lesson, the writer uses Peter as the comeback kid. Said he made every mistake in the book you can make. He did everything wrong, and yet he came back, with great service and great devotion to his Lord, and he was always forgiven. So if there's any other lesson here today that is more important than this, I don't know what it is. There is no place you can go, nothing you can do wrong, that Jesus will not forgive you if you come to him and ask for forgiveness. So this is a lesson about love and forgiveness. Peter was very distressed when Jesus said, do you love me 3 times? And I guess he would be. Jesus actually was using 3 different words for love. When the first time he said, Peter, am I your friend? You love me like a friend. And that is philios, love. And Peter said, oh, of course I love you like a friend. You're a tremendous friend to me. And he said, feed my sheep, okay? Follow me, do what you saw me do. The second time he said, Peter, do you love me? Do you love me as a brother? Do you love me with the love of kinship that, you're bound to be in love as a brother? And Peter said, yes, I love you like a brother. Of course I do. And he was a little bit put off by this because he didn't know why he was being grilled. And finally, he said, do you love me with the agapos? Do you love me with the love of God? Do you love me in a way that you will never fail to love me? And that's when Peter kind of broke down. He said, Lord, you know all things, and you know I love you. But something in Peter kept him from saying that in the beginning, that he loved Jesus with the love of God. And because it was a time in his life when he did not display that love, and you kind of remember that time. And this was a point that he was going back to remember. Now that time in his life happened when Jesus was arrested. And this is, all the disciples scattered after he was arrested and taken into the high priest's home to be tried before he was crucified. Peter followed him at a distance. I'm going to read this. Then seizing Jesus, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. But when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down with them. And a servant girl saw him sitting there, and she looked at him closely, and she pointed to him and said, "This man was with Jesus." And he said, "Woman, I don't know him." A little later, someone else saw him and said, "You are also one of his disciples, aren't you?" And he said, "Man, I am not." And about an hour later, another came along and said, "Certainly this fellow was with him and is a Galilean." And Peter said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything you're talking about." And just as he was speaking, the cock crowed, and Jesus remembered that, and Peter remembered that Jesus had said, "Before the cock crows 3 times, you will deny me." And that was when Peter was talking to Jesus before he was arrested. He said, "Peter, you follow me, do what I..." And he said, "You know, I'll do anything for you, Lord. I will die for you. I will give up my life for you." And he said, "Before the cock crows 3 times, you will deny me." And of course, when this happened, when Jesus was arrested and Peter was there denying him for the 3rd time, he heard that cock crow, and he wept bitterly. He was just so very ashamed that he had denied his Lord. And he went outside and wept bitterly. The scene on the beach where he says, Jesus said to Peter, "Do you love me?" He is giving him a chance, giving Peter a chance to be forgiven, to be atoned for the 3 times that he had denied him before. So he is asking, that's why he asked him 3 times. He said, "I want to know that you actually not just love me as a friend, not just love me as a brother or a companion, but you love me with the love of God. And that is what I expect of you. And that is your salvation. That is your forgiveness." And I think Peter, when he recognized that he had betrayed Jesus by denying him 3 times, here perhaps he was exonerated in some ways, that Jesus had also forgiven him for all of his denial. And he also counted on him because Jesus had kind of appointed Peter to keep the disciples together and to keep moving. He said, when he saw the crowds, he said, "Everybody out there is like a sheep without a shepherd. And so I am appointing you to be a shepherd and to take care of my sheep." So who are the sheep? The sheep are just anybody walking around on not 4 legs, but 2. And they are people. They are God's children. They are his people. And so he is appointing Peter to be a shepherd to them. In fact, the call to follow Jesus appoints anyone who accepts that to be a shepherd to his people, to take care of his people. And he asked that same question, "Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me?" And if you can say, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you. You are my friend. I depend on that friendship. Do you love me as a brother? Do you love me as a son of God or a daughter of God?" And you can say, "Yes, I love you as a brother." That is a very strong kinship. And then finally, do you love me eternally? Do you love me with the love of God, the great agape love that is eternal? And yes, if you can say, "I love you with the love of God," then you have you've answered all those questions to your own salvation. So this is a pretty special lesson for us today to look at Peter's experience and identify with it, because we're all called to take care of the sheep. If you're a disciple of Jesus, you're called to feed his sheep, take care of his lambs, feed his sheep. They are, everywhere you go, they're there. You do not escape from God's people in any setting. And so caring for them as friends, caring for them as brothers, caring for them with the unconditional love of God is your calling. And some of us don't quite have the ego that Peter had maybe, and say, oh, I'll do it, I'll die for you, Lord, I'll do anything you want me to. Most of us are a little timid about that, but we can take a good lesson away from Peter's experience that there is always forgiveness. That there's never a time, never a place, as long as you have breath and life, that you cannot be forgiven for whatever it is you confess to God in remorse. Then you are. Forgiveness is just the ultimate prize of being a child of God and being a follower of Christ. The lesson is follow me. And I said I had a Quo Vadis experience. You know what that is. The question Quo Vadis asks is, where are you going? And the book Quo Vadis that was actually framed around Peter when, after the crucifixion, after the resurrection, after all the encounters that they had, Peter was on the road and he was walking, and someone approached him and said, Quo Vadis, where are you going, Peter? And he wasn't quite sure, but he said, I think I'm going to Rome. And that was, and whoever was talking to him said, follow me and I'll get you there. Because actually Rome at this time is the center of the world, and it is the capital of the world. And if they can get the gospel message to Rome, it can go. All roads lead to Rome, all roads lead away from Rome. So that was the ultimate place to take the gospel, so it would get broadcast to all the world. My Quo Vadis experience happened out on Penman Road. I had a mission to go pick up a prescription, I think, from a doctor who's had an office out on Penman Road somewhere. And I got in my car and started down Penman Road. It had been a long time. This happened many years ago, but I hadn't been down Penman Road probably since I was, in my teens. And I started out, and I checked my gas gauge, and I had a range of 75 miles worth of gas. It tells you how far you can go. It was down almost to a little below the fourth of a tank, but I could go about 75 miles. So I started down this road and thought, well, it can't be too long. I remember I've been here before. So I started down that road, and I drove 25 miles. And all I saw that was big concrete walls. I finally got to a place where there were concrete walls. I knew there were roofs of houses behind them, but I didn't see any gate, any way to get in. And it was just the concrete. Have you been down there? Have you seen this? Okay. Well, and you get to places where there are roundabouts. And I decided I wanted to go back. I got on one of these roundabouts, and I wanted to go back where I came from. And I ended up going the same way that I came from. I couldn't get off the roundabout without going where I didn't want to go. And I didn't, this was a while back, and I didn't have a phone with me. I was getting a little nervous because now I had only 50 miles worth of, on my register. and I had to keep going. I didn't know how to get back where I came from, so I had to keep going some other way. And the roads got bigger and they went all different ways, and I was just really very, very worried, and I just didn't know what to do. I kept riding though, and I was down to about 20 miles on my register when I looked over there and I saw what looked like a red truck in a field, and it was a golf course. It was a little golf course. It was a par 3. And I thought I had remembered that, seeing that before, but I had been down and come around and gotten on the roundabouts and come back and then gone the other. But anyway, I saw that over to the side, and I said, oh my goodness, there's a truck there. Maybe there's a person there. Maybe there's a telephone there. Maybe I can get some directions. So I pulled over and walked in, and there was a woman in there, and she had a telephone, and she said, yeah, you can use the telephone if you want to. And she said, how come? What's the matter? I said, I've been lost for the last hour. I've been driving around and I couldn't find my way out of here. And she said, well, the landscape has changed a little since you haven't been here in a while, and the roundabouts are confusing. And she said, but you see that red truck out there? Yeah, I see the red truck. She said, that's my husband's truck. And he is coming back in a few minutes. He's out there doing something on the course, but he's coming back, and when he gets back, he's going to town. So all you have to do is follow him. Follow that truck, and he'll take you back to where you need to go. So I waited, we chatted for a little bit, I relaxed, my thoughts kind of went down to normal, and sure enough, the husband came along, and he waved at me and he said, you just stay behind me. Well, couldn't miss him. A red truck is just easy to follow. And there's no other traffic much out there, because there's nobody else on Pittman Road. But anyway, I got in the car and looked at the gas meter. I had about 25 miles left, and I could get back, and it was about probably I could get to a gas station in 25 miles. So I felt like I was going to be okay. Got in the truck, followed him. He took the roundabouts, but I followed him, and I didn't get back. There was a way you could get around him, and you didn't have to go back to where you came from. And so, but I didn't know that until I was following somebody who knew the way. And so after a while, I got down to where I saw a place that I recognized, and I was so relieved. And he kind of raved out the window, and he turned off and went someplace else, but I knew from that point that I could get home. That is an experience that is a metaphor for me, and it's been an experience all my life, that you do have to have someone who knows the way to follow. And that was Jesus' command to all his disciples and to all who call on his name today, is follow me. And I will show you the way. I am the way, and I am the life. So you can be sure, if you follow me, that you're doing the right thing. So I end up that Quo Vadis experience is the answer is always follow him. The question is always, where do we go from here, Lord? Where do we go from here? But it doesn't, I don't have to know. I just know the answer is follow him, and you will know the way. Amen.
Have you been on Penman lately?
No.
No roundabouts now.
No roundabouts. That's good. They put a couple in San Marcos.
Does it really, I've never been 25 miles on Penman Road, is it?
Oh, you can go to another state. Get out there. The that's what, you finally, you can, you get on, and you see the expressway, and you get off on one of the, you know, the turn off, you're on a highway to, you know, I don't know.
I'm gonna have to go to the beach and drive around Benton.
Thank you, Sissy, for your usual great lesson.
Oh, yes.
Got a few announcements. Tomorrow, Joy Group, we have the people from Enterprise Children's Home going to give us a program. So please come. You're going to get a good meal and a lot of fun. Don't forget our Sunday school party on the 26th, Thursday, at 5 p.m. And if anyone needs a program, Patty has them in the back. Again, don't forget the Global Impact Missions on the 19th of May. That's about a month, a little less than a month away, so be prepared. Now, there's one other thing, is that you see this pretty box here. The Methodist Children's Village needs some things, and we need to fill this box up.
To overflowing.
Huh?
To overflowing.
Yes, ma'am.
And there when they say no.
I already took mine to the Family Life Center.
Well, you gotta bring it back.
Okay, what we need, we have cookies and crackers, cereal, large bags, Frosted Flakes, Fruit Loops, no Honey Nut, juice, Kleenex, art supplies, and children's books. I'm going to pass this around, look at what it is, and bring what you can and put in here.
They have shovels and buckets for $1 at the dollar store.
Yeah.
They want those, so.
Was toilet paper and paper towels on there?
I did,
Laundry soap,
Yeah.
the list is on the side of the box.
there was.
Kleenex, napkins, paper towels, rolls, liquid laundry detergent anytime, fabric softener, dryer sheets, and copy paste.
Okay. I
And
know
the list will come around and you can see what is on it. But we also have on the side of this what we need.
I noticed that Staples is running a special on copy paper. You can get a whole, what do you call them, a green crate of them, for $30. So some of us might go together and get that.
Do that. Are there any
We got
announcements or concerns of the class?
Joan and I went to see Sarah, and we had such a delightful time, and the place is like, whoo, it's like a resort. She may not know all of us, but you know, when you go in, you can always tell her who you are. She looked good. We had a good time, didn't we?
We had a good visit.
Where
About,
is
what,
she?
30 minutes we
She's
were
at,
there?
yeah, is it
Harbor Chase.
Harbor Chase?
And
She's in the
Almost
memory
to
section.
Union Creek on the right. Across from Sonny's and Ace Hardware, somewhere
Yeah.
right out in there.
It's a beautiful place.
Brand new.
And she would love to have you come.
We have one on our fridge. Oh, she is.
That's beautiful. Bring their friends. Sometimes it's easier to have two to help with the conversation, I think. But she's doing good.
What about Kale?
Well, Bill took KO to,
KO's doing good. As a matter of fact, I brought him to breakfast Wednesday. So he can't drive, but he can get around. He needs a walker. But he's doing good. He's trying to get to the point where he can get his driver's license back. And if he can do that, he'll be able to move around a little bit.
Is he getting sassy again?
Well, he's always been sassy. It doesn't make any difference whether he's down or up. He's sassy. I talked with Janice, and she's been going through a problem where she has migraines. And I think she's going to try and make it to church today, she and Patrick. But keep her in your prayers and thoughts. She's going through a pretty rough time.
I talked to Patrick, he called and that she did not feel like she could get on the phone right.
I know, and but this was her teaching week, and thankfully we had Sissy step up to the plate, which she always does.
I think she's over the migraines. I talked to her yesterday, but she still has a lot of dizziness and it's difficult, you know, when those hit in vertigo, which she can't. I know all about that. My husband is.
If there's no further announcements or anything, yes.
Elaine broke a bone in her leg,
Oh my gosh.
so that's why I'm solo today.
Well, I was gonna ask you as soon as I was
She
ready.
broke it up.
Two weeks ago, she stumbled and fell on the front steps, and she she thought it was just a sprain, so last week after church, it just kept hurting. So I took the ER, they took a quick picture. She fractured her fibula. At any rate, she's 2 casts along now, and I don't think she felt like hopping around today.
Yeah.
So are you the chief cook and bottle washer now?
You take
Let's avoid
instructions
that
well.
subject.
I can understand that. I fell and fractured my fibula many years ago thinking it was a sprain.
Yeah.
And I wore a cast for about 6 weeks. As a matter of fact, I met Patty wearing a big white shoe at my college.
Yeah, me too.
So I have a fond memory of a fractured fibula.
The doctor said that she does feel it, and that she doesn't need surgery or a pin in it, but she's very close, so.
Takes a lot of time. If there's no further messages, our sainted one and director of humor, St. Thomas, you may come up and entertain the troops.
Well, yeah, I had to wait for my assistant to get this cleared always.
You mean your personal IT department?
Yes.
Now his brother.
I also had someone.
Joan, you throw that in. Not close enough.
Raise it up. Raise it up so we can hear you.
They gotta do
Speak
it
into the
anyway.
mic.
This one says, you gotta love the Irish. Airline food, you have to love the Irish. Airborne approximately 30 minutes on an outbound evening Aer Lingus flight from Dublin. The lead attendant for the cabin crew in her lovely Irish brogue nervously made the following painful announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so very sorry, but it appears that this has been a terrible mix-up 1 minute prior to takeoff by our airport catering service. I don't know how this happened, but we have 103 passengers on board, and unfortunately, only 40 dinner meals. I truly apologize for this mistake and inconvenience. When passengers' muttering had died down, she continued. Anyone who is kind enough to give up their meal so that someone else can eat will receive free, unlimited drinks for the duration of our 5-hour flight. Her next announcement came 4 hours later. If anyone would like to change their minds, we still have 40 dinner meals. You just gotta bless the Irish. That's
If we'll all stand, we'll be dismissed. Let the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart, be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Amen. Thank you, sister. And thank you guys and our IT department.